Hello, everybody. Menopause is horrible. It starts out sometime after 40, usually. You know, it, it depends, each woman is different, but, but around 45, you can start thinking soon it's coming. And it's so horrible. It's just horrible. It starts out, I'm assuming you're a woman that's been regular your whole life, every month, like clockwork, within a day or two, and barring the times you were pregnant, you can pretty much plan your life. Most women, I know there are women who've always had problems with regular monthly cycles, but if I'm talking about the majority of women, we get our monthly, after we grow up, every month we more or less can plan our life, knowing that for such and such a date, you count on the calendar, and so you can pretty much run your life more or less within reason. You get some pains and aches, and you take some pills for the pain when you get it, and after you've had it a few years, your monthly cycle, you learn to live with it, and you can plan around it. So that, you finally get that under control, you live your life. And then around 45, let's say, for me it started really in the past, for the most part in the past few months, it's gotten really, but anyway, okay, as usual, I'm exaggerating. You can also learn to live with menopause, but it's not as regular. You can't plan as much. Now, what starts happening is now I live in Florida, so I perhaps was a bit in denial for a few years. And no, it really only did start in the past, I'd say 2 years. But, you get these hot flashes. Now, I don't know if they were hot flashes, to be honest, because it used to happen only when I was at home. I would feel very hot, and it could be because I had to regulate my temperature because I had this air conditioner that I turn on and off. I get too cold, I turn it off, I turn it on. But what the first real sign was when I would start skipping periods. Like I'd go a month or two and I wouldn't get my period. And then I'd be all concerned because I perhaps had a boyfriend that in that short time period. My boyfriends don't last very long, but occasionally, I will go beyond what you should with a man that's not your boyfriend. So I would call him my boyfriend. But anyway, I digress. So then I'd be freaking out. Oh my gosh, even though I've always been extremely careful to make sure I would never do anything to risk getting pregnant. Using forms of birth control and stuff. But, even so, I would be like, oh my gosh, what must have happened? Because, there's always that small window of error when you're using birth control that something might not work and you could accidentally get pregnant. It's very small. It hardly ever happens if you're using birth control properly. But, there is always that small risk that something didn't work. And so, of course, then I would be freaking out, like, oh my gosh, why didn't my period come, etc., so forth. And it would turn out I wasn't pregnant because, fortunately, I had been careful. And then, what then started happening was I would start getting my period for longer, for like it would last an entire month. I would start bleeding and I wouldn't stop bleeding for a month. And of course, at that point, I went to the doctor. And the doctor said, "Oh yeah, these are symptoms." I told her, I'm having this, and yes, you're premenopausal. She called it. Premenopausal is when you're still getting your period, but it's starting to act cuckoo on you. It's not as regular anymore, and you can't really plan your life around it anymore because you don't know when it's going to come, when it's going to end. It's just so several times over the past 2 years, I'd say, I would get my period for much longer than normal, and usually it would last an entire month. And one time, I had my period for a month. It stopped, and then 2 weeks later, I got it again for another month, and and the doctor said, we can give you hormones for this. You take progesterone, to regulate your periods, so you get regular periods, and basically it's birth control, but instead of for controlling birth, it gets your periods regular. So, but I chose against it because I've heard that, and it's actually proven that too many of these hormones and even birth control pills and hormones, if you're on them for a period of time, they can cause cancer. Birth control pills, if you're a young girl, okay, if you have a steady boyfriend and you want to have something safe, you go on birth control pills, and they're not as bad, I think, but you do have to not be on them for longer than a certain period of time. So find out about that when you go to the doctor to get them. But the ones you take for menopause apparently have a different mix of hormones, and they are very cancer-causing. Anything foreign, any foreign hormones you take, even, I don't know much about it, but even transsexuals have to be careful. Male to female, I don't know if male to female definitely have to be careful with these hormones they take. They need them, of course, but, and of course their doctor is going to guide them properly and do your own reading and all, but the hormones cause cancer. The female hormones do. And the female to male, I don't know about that. If the testosterone causes cancer also, but anytime you're taking hormones, you run the risk of cancer. But in particular, women who take hormones for menopause, I know that there's a few years there where it was the fad, and a lot of women got breast cancer from it. So my point with this is, the doctor offered, she said you could take hormones and this could help you, but here are the risks. And I decided, well, the risks aren't worth it. I think I'll try to stick it through. So, so that was, the first years. And then recently, like in the past 6 months, I've been getting hot flashes out of the blue, worse than I've ever had them, before. I used to get I thought they were hot flashes. Even you've seen me in some videos where I spontaneously have to turn on the air conditioning because I'm feeling hot. But I think now that I've had real hot flashes, that was just the air conditioning, because Florida's hot when the air conditioning's off, which I'll sometimes turn it off because I'm cold because it's on too high. So, but now, oh my gosh, these hot flashes are just, first of all, they're embarrassing. Second of all, they're so uncomfortable. You just be sitting there and suddenly you feel hot. You start to sweat, and you're embarrassed, and you think everybody's noticing. People probably don't notice. Of course, if you start fanning yourself, which I usually do because it's just a sensation that, it's just so uncomfortable. Oh my gosh. And at work, the air conditioning is on pretty strong. It's on because it's hot. We're in Florida. Men wear suits. And I was always cold at work, so I would always take a sweater with me to work or a shawl or something and put the shawl on. So then I'd be fine with the shawl on all day. I'd be, perfectly fine. But now what's happening, I'll wear a sweater or something, and because it's cold, the air conditioning's on strong. Suddenly I'll get a hot flash, and I cannot get that sweater off fast enough because it feels like I'm suffocating. But it happens from 1 second to the next. so I'll be cold. The air conditioning's on really low temperature. I'll feel very, very, very cold, shivering, put the sweater on, and then at some point I'll get a flash of heat, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I gotta unbutton all these buttons, and I can't get the thing off, and I'm just desperately trying to undress. And that's not even the worst of it, because sometimes it's happened in front of someone, like if I'll be talking to my boss or, a male supervisor. Like, I have a female supervisor, and she understands, and it's not quite as embarrassing because she's been through it herself. So, so we laugh about it when it happens in front of her. but when it happens in front of a male counterpart, it's just the most embarrassing thing because just first, like, sometimes you try to, you feel the hot flash coming on, but you're trying to talk to the supervisor about whatever, about some project, and you're saying to yourself, okay, I just got to get through this hot flash, pretend like it's not happening. And you try to finish the conversation, but then of course you can't focus on the conversation because you're so uncomfortable. It's just, so one time I couldn't take it, and I grabbed a thing and I started fanning myself in front of the boss. I said, oh, excuse me. And I just laughed, I laughed. I don't know. And these are younger bosses that perhaps haven't had a wife that's been through it. And so, if it's an older boss, you could say, okay, maybe if he has an older wife. Some of these very successful men have very young wives, so they have no idea what menopause is either. But, men who have been married a long time and have a wife who's my age or older perhaps can understand that. Anyway, whatever. So what I think I'm going to start doing is, of course, take a sweater to work because, like I said, the air conditioning gets very cold and sometimes you're shivering because it's so cold. But first of all, what I guess I'll start doing is taking a shawl to work because that's easier to get off than a sweater with buttons or something you got to pull up over your top of your head. And, a shawl, you could just take it off quickly and you don't look like you're undressing for your boss, because that's the thing. I mean, it's almost like what it looks like. I mean, obviously we know that's not what it is, but when you're suddenly spontaneously undressing, which is, taking off a sweater, you can imagine what that looks like. It's like and fanning yourself, it almost looks like you've been overcome with passion for your boss and you're ripping off your clothes and trying to fan away the passion, embarrassing. I mean, I'm sure it's nice for some guy that you're dating, but so there's that part. I mean, there's the physical part of menopause. And then there's the psychological part. And in spite of me being pretty, pretty modern woman and knowing that just because you've had children or just because you're capable of bearing children doesn't make you more or less of a woman. I mean, rationally, I know that. But perhaps there is that little part of you that knows you're no longer, or you're reaching the point where you're no longer able to bear children. I always chose never to have children. That was always my choice. It's never been something that was imposed upon me because of some, physical problem that I might have had. I always chose not to have children because I never really felt in a position where I could actually be a good mother, or maybe I could have been a good mother, but I just never felt ready. I was always a little scared that I might screw the kid up, and so I always chose to be careful, and I've never been pregnant. So, I mean, I assume I always could have gotten pregnant if I would have chosen to. I just never have been. But now that I'm actually at a point where I probably, if I still can, because I do still get sporadic cycles, I still get them, like this, every, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I still get them. But it's likely whatever's left in there is not, not good quality. I mean, they're rotten eggs is what I what I call them. I've got a few rotten eggs left. To put it in a more vulgar way. Because, I mean, let's be realistic, that's what it is. Whatever eggs a woman my age has left, they're either infertile or they're rotten, and you're run a very high risk of having a child with developmental disabilities. So it would certainly be extremely irresponsible of me at this point to allow myself to get pregnant if I actually could still get pregnant. But, so there's that part of it, the psychological part, and, the emotional part, I guess, maybe there's some of that too, although at this stage, I feel I've sort of learned to deal with emotions, even hormonal emotions, which are a little less controllable, let's so to speak. It's less easy to control emotions brought upon by hormones. For example, premenstrual stress, PMS. If you're still a younger woman, a couple days before your period. Now, the feminists are going to tell you this isn't true, but it is true. Hormones do affect your emotions, just like when you take steroids, you become aggressive. There is definitely a relation between hormones and decision-making, capabilities to make decisions. And I'm not saying you can't control it with your rational self, but it becomes an effort. So by the time you've reached, say, your late 30s, early 40s, you've learned that when you have these rushes of emotion, your rationale says, okay, you're having one of your hormonal, hormonal tantrums. Just calm down. You learn to calm yourself down when you're having one of those hormonal things. So for me, anyway, most of us, some women have them worse than others, and maybe they can't control it as much. I found that later in life, 30, in my 30s and later, hopefully if you're younger, you learn to do it as soon as possible once you get your period. But, as you get older, you learn. So when I'm feeling a rush of emotion, or start getting into one of these, you know one of these hormonal hurricanes, if you want to call it that, I pretty much just calm myself down and say, okay, you're having an episode, just calm down. It's sort of like many of us like our husbands to do it for us if we have a husband, but it's good if you can do it for yourself. Your husband, poor guy, if he does it for you, that's great, but he shouldn't be expected to. It's your body. You should be calming yourself down when you have an episode. It's nice to have a guy next to you who also encourages you, but sometimes I would find that when a man tells me to calm down, it makes me even angrier, because I'm like, who are you to tell me to calm down, when you're having one of those. So really you should just take charge of your own hormones and learn to calm yourself down. And so I think I've got that part pretty much under control. I will feel like sort of PMS, but like worse PMS, the psychological part of it, the emotional part of it. And actually headaches, yeah, the headaches I used to get just before my period, now I'm getting them whenever. There's like before, just a day or two before my period. What's the matter, Smokey? You want to go outside? It's like 4 in the morning. But of course, when I'm up, he wakes up. So. Okay, sweetie, I'm gonna go open the door for him. Where was I? Oh, so the thing is, women who get PMS, actually, we sort of, in a way, those symptoms help us, because we know before we reach menopause, we know that, oh, I've got that headache that I always get every month, and it's like, let's say you're a woman who doesn't mark the calendar, doesn't keep track. I was one of those women who I knew I'd get it every month, and I just never paid attention to the calendar so much, because I knew a day before I would be having a certain type of headache would come on. It's not a regular headache, where it was a different kind of headache you feel, and then it's like, oh, that's the sign. So for me, it was that. Basically, that's it. I would get a certain type of headache, different from regular headaches, and I know, oh, better go out and buy pads, because tomorrow it's coming. So I wouldn't have to use the calendar. I would just follow my own little signs that my body would warn me. But now I'll get those headaches at whenever. I guess I could start marking the calendar with my symptoms to see if there's any kind of, but I don't know. I might start doing that, but as someone who's never really bothered much with counting the days of the month and just basing my preparation for my period on my symptoms, it's kind of hard to start now. Oh, I got to start counting. When was the last time I had it? And so. But yeah. And then the symptoms, maybe I should start marking every time I get a headache, but it's just not something I feel like doing. But the danger is, if you do still get your period, that's the other thing. You're menopausal, you're entering menopause, but you do still get these irregular periods. You can't prepare for them, unless well, even if you do count on the calendar, you still can't prepare for them, because you don't know when you're going to get it. It's just out of the blue. It's almost, in that respect, back like when you were a teen and you hadn't learned to prepare, because you didn't know when it was coming. Teens are also irregular in the beginning when they first start menopause, start menstruating. You might get it, then you might not get it, and you start, or some start off and they're regular from the bat, but you quickly become regular as a teen. You get it, and then within a few months you start getting it every month. So there's that, but and so you just got to be prepared all the time because you never know when you're going to get it. So there's that part of it, and I guess this will be like this for a while, and then the symptoms, supposedly, from what I've been investigating, they eventually you stop getting your period altogether. The symptoms, the hot flashes and all that go away, and you're old. So that's the other thing, the part of the psychological, this is it. I can no longer deny that I'm getting old. Like up until a year or two ago, I could still, even though obviously you see the wrinkles, you see the saggy skin, you're getting old. You could still deny, hey, I'm still like I was in teen. I'm regular every month. I could still get pregnant. If you wanted to get pregnant, you still could, even if you've chosen not to. But now there's no denying it. When you're in menopause, there's no denying it. You're old. You're it's aging creeping up on you, but it's like it's that last wall between you and old age. And you could still get, buy creams and try to look younger and dress a certain way to try to feel younger, and but of course, you can't deny it. You're old, and then so you got to get over that psychological, which I'm dealing with. Actually, I've been dealing with getting old since before I was old, and people were telling me, "What are you, crazy?" Like when I was 45, I started just telling everyone I was 50. Now I really am 50, but I've been telling people I'm 50 for the last 5 years because I figure, at this point, you either round up or you round down, And it seemed better for me to round up, because that way, if I tell someone I'm 50, but I'm really 45, and I look 45 or 50, I can kind of look my age, or perhaps even luckier, I look a little younger. But if you're 45 and you say you're 40, and then you're 46, 47, 48, and you say you're 40, no, it's not as, it's a little harder to cover. So, I've been saying I'm 50 since I was 45. Now I'll be saying I'm 50. Now, then I'll probably around 52, 53, I'm just going to start saying I'm 60, Just start rounding up. I guess that way you look better than your age usually. So now you got to start lying about your age in the other direction. You don't have to. You could just tell people your age, But I think I'm going to start lying about my age, rounding up. And whatever, I'm dealing with it. It's not the worst thing in the world. And I guess I'm fortunate that I still am, still healthy. I really should go to the doctor, though. I haven't been, you got to go for your annual physical and all that, and I haven't been in over a year, so I need to do that and check up on things. But, well, if I can get through it, I guess talking about it actually is helping me. Talking about it here and talking to women who've been through it helps a little bit. And that's it. You just gotta accept it. Well, I've been always a woman who sort of just accept it. I mean, you can deny it for a while, but you gotta accept it. You're getting old, and older women, okay, we can't offer as much in the way of physical beauty, but hopefully you haven't depended on your physical beauty your whole life. And if you are a young woman listening now, and you have depended on getting by through life on just your looks, start doing something for your brain, because it will get to a point where the younger girls are going to be prettier than you. You can look as good as you can for your age, but if you're depending on that for your self-worth, you're going to crash against a wall at a certain point in time. So I'm just saying this out of, out of preparing you. I'm not saying it with delight. I think if you're a beautiful woman and you've been able to get by on your looks, that's awesome. And go for it and use what works for you. But prepare for when you don't have those looks anymore, or, if you get to a point where you don't have those looks anymore. Now, you're good up until, I'd say, 35. You're pretty safe if you keep eating right and taking care of your skin. Use one thing, I guess, in hindsight, two things I would have done. Well, one thing, because one of them is just, it seems so unfathomable to me, but one thing, I would have used those beauty creams when I was young. When I was younger, I would have really taken better care of my skin. It makes it look younger a little longer. Before because when you start using Botox and those procedures, there are now non-invasive procedures, but they're expensive. And procedures for looking younger, they're expensive. They also do not, they make you look better, but you still cannot compete with a 30-year-old when you're 40, 50, There's nothing like natural beauty. Natural beauty is something to embrace, because you're not going to get that ever again. You can use, like I said, non-surgical procedures even, and there are better procedures now, but they're super expensive. Plastic surgery, of course, you can get an operation for something that's really like a very severe deformity. Of course, there's nothing wrong with getting that fixed. But when you start doing, like hair lip, for example, you're born with a hair lip, of course you get an operation and fix that, and you look better, and actually it's also something that's makes life difficult for you, because it's hard to eat properly, breathe properly. A cleft palate, I think. Hair lip, no, cleft palate is what I meant to say. Which I don't know if that's related to the hair lip. But, can you hear the frog? Those tree frogs. I go in circles with these rambles, but, and younger women also, men are very visual creatures. So, if you're looking to find a good man who's wealthy, you gotta find him before you're 35. I'm sorry. If you want to be a trophy wife, you gotta find him before you're 35. And you've got to, keep your looks going as long as you can. And you still, if you are a trophy wife, maybe you get, it's like having a job. Now, hopefully you're a trophy wife and you love your husband and your husband loves you. You can be both. You can have love and be a trophy wife. Now, I'm not a trophy wife. I never have been. I never found a rich man. Maybe I could have been a trophy wife if I would have made more of an effort to find a rich man. I always kind of figured, well, I'll fall in love with whoever comes along. I probably should have made more of an effort in hindsight. Because here's the thing, if you're a trophy wife, you do run the risk at around age 40, 50, you're very wealthy, husband throws you away for a younger woman, but you still have some control over that, as far as, okay, you lose your husband and his love to a younger woman, but you've been married to him, you've borne him children, you have a financial power there to some extent. Although most wealthy men will do a prenuptial agreement. But when you're younger and prettier, you might be able to score a better deal with the prenup there than, just flat out, an older man an older rich man will likely not marry anyone over 40. Anyway, I mean, you have Rupert Murdoch, who married Jerry Hall, but he's still like 20, 30 years older than her. Jerry Hall is a very famous supermodel from the 70s. She's married to Rupert Murdoch, one of the world's billionaires. They just got married recently. He's been divorced a couple of times. Each time he married, well, he had a wife that he married when he was young, and she was with him through. Yeah, that's the thing. If you marry a man who is going to be successful, ordinarily you're the first wife. You're the one who sticks through him with him while he's getting rich, and you do reap some benefits from that, because usually when you've married a man who doesn't have money and then becomes rich, there's no prenup. So when you get divorced, you get half. So the first wife has a lot of power, financial power in the end, even though she usually will lose her husband to a younger, prettier woman. But if you're the younger, prettier woman and your husband's a bit older and he's going through his midlife crisis and he's trading in his first wife for a newer model, that's what it is. You've heard the joke before maybe, and it's a joke based on reality. The man might still be a little bit wide-eyed because he's 40. His first wife wasn't maybe that drop-dead gorgeous woman. She was the woman that he fell in love with, or many times man maybe isn't head over heels in love, but he sees that she's a good woman that will help him reach his goals. So being the first wife married to a man with goals in life is not a bad thing to be. And if you're pretty, but bear in mind, you will likely get traded off later in life, 20 years down the line, after you've raised his kids and stuck through him through the hard times and etc. Second wife might still have some financial pull because the guy might have flipped. He's been with this other wife for 20 years. The passion is gone. He finds a young, new, hot potato, and he might just marry her without a prenup, or his prenup will be very generous to her. So that's also not a bad situation. But by the time he's on his third marriage, because again, you're the second wife, you're probably also going to get traded off a little bit later. Because he's 40, let's say you're 30. In 20 years down, he'll be 60. He'll be very wealthy. You'll be 50. The second wife now I'm talking to, you're going to be in your 50s again. Same thing for you. Around 35, you got to start worrying. 35, 40, after 40, definitely start worrying. He's going to trade you in for another second. But you're still okay because you had that prenup that wasn't too, was still relatively generous. But the third wife, if you're a young girl and the guy's on his third marriage, it's likely the prenup is going to be very strict. And he's going to put certain demands on you. So, if you're just a mistress, you might just be his mistress. You're not, try to swing a good deal with him and don't stick around thinking, oh, I'm going to show him that I'm not a gold digger. Because you think, oh, I'll make him think yes, you are a gold digger. If you're his mistress, you're with him for his money. He's an old man. He's wrinkly. You're not attracted to him. And if you're just his mistress, as soon as that man's gone, you're gone. Either he passes away, you're left with nothing because there's no legal bond. Maybe he's given you an apartment that he signed over to you, but make sure if you are planning to be the mistress and and he's been married twice and he's got some experience and he knows by now not to go cuckoo over women. He wants to have a young, pretty girl, but he's going to be very careful. Make sure he's giving you an apartment in your name, or, it's a business deal for you at this point. It's, I'm not saying I condone being a mistress, but, and if you are a mistress, act like a proper mistress. The mistresses today appear to be, they appear to feel like they've got the status of a wife, that they have all the same rights. You don't. You don't, and know your place. I'm sorry, I know I'm sounding very, but if you've chosen to become the mistress to a rich man, this is me speaking from an outsider looking in, because I've never ever done any of these things, but I've lived on this earth long enough to see these things happen around me. Maybe there are elderly mistresses, I don't know. I mean, if they are, maybe they've been with, well, but then, okay, all this stuff I'm saying, then you have Prince Charles of England. He had a gorgeous wife, Princess Diana, Lady Diana, when he married her. Beautiful, tall, stereotypical, European style beauty. What Europeans consider beautiful. She was actually, she had a bit of a big nose. Let's be frank. But Lady Diana was a beautiful woman, elegant, beautiful, from a good family. Just gorgeous, gorgeous woman. Well, Prince Charles had her. It was an arranged marriage. And the whole time he was cheating on her with Camilla, because he always loved Camilla. Camilla is the same age as Prince Charles, and he met her when they were very young. Maybe not so very young, but I don't actually remember how their love story began. But Camilla's at least as far as when he was married to Diana, Camilla was a divorced woman. So that already would make her unacceptable as a wife. And he was already married to Princess Diana. Camilla's not a beautiful woman, never has been. Even when she was young, she was okay looking, but she was never beautiful, and certainly not as she got older. And he was cheating on Lady Diana, this gorgeous, beautiful, tall, model-esque woman, and also, quite endearing, her personality, at least in the public eye. Maybe behind the scenes she wasn't so much. He was cheating on her with Camilla, who is at that point a divorced woman, old, frumpy looking, So you always do have those examples that a man actually does fall in love with a woman not for her looks, but for the most part they're the exception. For the most part, a man, is particularly very wealthy men, are going to look for a woman who is a trophy to him, whatever he feels a trophy is. The standards of beauty are definitely changed now than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But whatever he feels is a trophy is what he's going to marry. For example, Kanye West married Kim Kardashian, who is considered beautiful. I personally think she's a beautiful woman. Etc. So I'm off of menopause now, talking about how to become a good mistress. But so that's my advice to mistresses. My advice to old women in menopause: just deal with it, basically, and this is what you're going to expect if you're premenopausal. And then just stick it through if you can without hormones, so that you don't get cancer. And my advice to younger women who are taking away all the men and the rich men don't want us anymore: if you're going to be a mistress, try to get something out of the guy before he either dies or dumps you, because a very rich man can have as many women as he wants. When he has an income that is basically bottomless, he might have a few mistresses. You might be one of several mistresses, So try to be the main mistress and try to get something out of him. Stable, like, okay, look, we've been together for a year. I need an apartment or something. And then, of course, if you do that, you run the risk of him throwing you out. Look, I'm not with someone who's with me for, I don't want to, so you got to know each relationship is different. You got to see where you stand. But if you've been with him a year and you have nothing to show for it other than he just buys you things that are fleeting. For example, he might pay for you to get your hair and nails done. He might buy you pretty clothes, but these are not things that are going to be useful to you when you're 50, 60, 70. So I'd say try to get at least a studio apartment out of him. Not something, not something even big, but, at least a studio apartment where you have a place to go to when you're too old, you have a place to live, assuming you don't have any other skills in life. Let's say you've based your entire life on just having this rich man. If you can get him to marry you without a prenup, and then, of course, if you're a man who has a lot of money, you can take advice from this too. You can see the type of women that you are going to be attracting. You're going to be attracting extremely beautiful women, drop-dead gorgeous women, who may or may not have feelings for you. Ordinarily, they wouldn't have feelings for you if you didn't have that money. Now, I'm not saying they can't feel love. Maybe they feel love for you, but part of that love comes from money, from the money that you have. That's something, love is basically us trying to fill in what we don't have. It's partly, there's need in there. Insecurities that we have. Now, if you're financially insecure, a billionaire man who can buy you everything you want, if you're a woman who likes nice things, you can fall in love with him. It's easy to find that man attractive physically when he's filling a certain need that you have. So I'm not saying this beautiful young woman doesn't love you. She very well may, but the love is coming from your money. The fatherly figure is something that is attractive, that makes a man seem attractive to a woman. I'm attracted to men that are sort of paternal and want to take care, but who actually can take care, and money is part of that. Let's say, it's not 100%, because I've been with men who have money, and I just couldn't go through with it because I didn't find them attractive, their personality, or, like I told you, the yacht guy from a few weeks ago, if I would have been, he was a bit older, quite old. Sure, to him, I'm 50, he was probably 80, late 70s. To him, I did look like a young, hot thing, maybe. He was interested, but at least for sex, he was interested. I could have worked it, probably, but I just found him so unappealing. So it's not just money, but, that might have been part of it. I mean, the reason I decided to accept a date with him, well, come to think of it, I'll date anyone. I'll date poor men, I'll date rich, I'll give everyone a chance once. But, then we got into that huge fight because we were together just a short time, and things he was saying were so annoying to me, and I just, by the end of, it didn't last very long. We started fighting over lunch, and I stormed away and made him pay for the... Oh, that's terrible. I shouldn't laugh. I should have offered to pay half since we had such a bad date. Because it's not the money. Obviously, he can pay for the bill. Although, again, it was a place where he goes too often. He gets a discount. But, he had a huge yacht. It doesn't mean he was rich, but he appeared to be a rich man. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he had the yacht and nothing else, and he had nowhere to drop dead on land. But I assume he was very wealthy because he had that huge yacht. But anyway, whether he was or wasn't is irrelevant, because I just found the man so completely unappealing that I couldn't. So for me, yes, at this point, I would likely not get involved romantically with a man who doesn't have a certain amount of money. I'm not saying he has to be a billionaire. That would be nice, but He has to have some stability in life. I don't want a broke guy. A guy who's broke. I'm broke. You know, I've got a little bit saved up and this and that, but I can't afford a broke guy. I need a guy who can at least hold his own. And then if we got together, we could hold our own together, and it'll actually, life would be easier because we would both be, you know, it'd be 2 paychecks, and I could actually move out of my parents' house. And so at this stage, money does have some bearing on who I would be willing to settle for. Same with a guy who's not rich with a woman. And see, that's why I'm probably not attracting that kind of man, because a man who's holding his own doesn't want a woman who's going to be a burden on him. So I really need to kick myself in the butt and get my act together this year. I'm thinking 2018 is going to be the year where I really do something. You know, I'm selling another little property that I have in Argentina, which is worth nothing, but I'm going to try to just, at my job, I've been kind of afraid to do this because I don't want to lose that job, because I really like my job, but it's only part-time. I really need to give them an ultimatum at this point, or you know, that's what I'm afraid to do, because if I give them an ultimatum, then I'm going to have to leave if they don't have something for me. And I've been kind of looking around, and there really is not a lot of work in the office. I'm there part-time because that's about the amount of work that they need me for. You know, I try to look for more things to do, and they've got it covered. So it's just that it's such a wonderful place to work, and I love the people I work with, and you know, I'm thinking, okay, I could keep that job, but then do my own little side business. But unfortunately, I'm not one of those go-getters that, you know, the thought of having my own business is nice, but you have to be dedicated. You have to come home every day. Like every day after work, I should come home and sit down for another 4 or 5 hours and work on having some sort of business. And I don't do that. I come home, I'm tired, my father has dinner for me. You know, I've become very complacent. And so I'm the type of person that really probably needs, you know, a little more structured 9-to-5 job. And you know, if I make, you know, I make a little money on the internet selling things. And it's sort of a hobby. It's not something I'm very, if I would dedicate myself, for example, doing sewing videos, doing sewing patterns, I do it when I feel like, and it's fun when I feel like doing it, and, you know, but I know that I could, you know, and maybe I really just need to do that. All right, let's forget that. Let's, I got some thinking to do here, but back to my advice to someone who wants to be a mistress to a man who's had 2 wives already. Or a mistress anyway. Maybe he's only had 1 wife and he just wants to have a mistress on the side. If you're the mistress, first of all, number 1, know your place. You're the mistress, you're not the wife. Don't go out there competing with the wife and oh yeah, he loves me and I'm better in bed and all this. He might have very deep, profound love for his wife. He probably does. It's with you, it's the physical part that he's not getting from his wife. So you're expected to do all the things for him that the woman he loves doesn't. And he loves her, so he's not going to force her to do that. You're the worker. You know, you can be a mistress, you can be a high-class worker. I'm not going to call it something else. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a job. It's a job just like any other job. And you might have feelings for your boss. I like my boss. I think he's speaking from, I'm not a mistress, but I'm a secretary. I have a boss who you know, I don't love him. And I've had bosses in the past that I've had very, you know, I've really, in quotes, loved platonically. It might have been a boss who was very kind. I had one particular boss at the World Bank that I fell in love with in my head. Nothing, you know, I've never had an affair with a boss or anything like that, but actually I've never been the other woman knowingly. I have been the other woman not knowing it, and found out later the guy was married. But I've never knowingly been the other woman. And I never would be personally. That's my personal choice. And I'm not saying it's I'm not judging someone who is. Everyone does what they need to do to get by. I would suggest if you're looking for true love, don't get involved with a married man, because more often than not, the man does not want to leave his wife. He just wants the physical, sexual excitement of having a young, pretty woman. And if the guy isn't even rich, it's not worth it to you. You'll likely get hurt in the long run. He's likely not going to leave his wife for you. He might leave her temporarily, but then he'll go back to her after the excitement with you is over. And many wives will take their husband back after an affair. A wife who's been with him for many years, knows him, probably knows, this is just a phase he's going through, whatever. She's hurt, but she'll wait it out a bit, She may or may not divorce him. Maybe she'll even divorce him. And if that's the case, then okay. She's divorced him, now he's free. But don't be with him thinking he's going to leave his wife. He, more often than not, from what I've seen around me in my 50 years on earth, usually he doesn't leave the wife. And he might be with you for a year or two and not leave the wife. So you're the mistress. And as long as you're the mistress and not his wife, behave like a mistress. Be discreet. And like I said, if the guy is not rich, it's really not worth it to you to be his mistress. If he can't buy you an apartment, he can't get you something that you can accumulate for your future, it's not worth it to be a mistress. It really isn't. You're the horrible woman. He might have kids that will hate you. Even if he leaves his wife and he goes with you, the kids will probably hate you because you destroyed their family, or you'll be perceived as the one who destroyed the family. The one who destroyed the family is the guy who had the affair, but it's just, it's not worth it. If you're a young, pretty girl, why are you going to be with a married man? Go find a nice guy. I mean, a nice single guy. And if you are doing it knowingly for the man, for his money, it's as a job. It's a job. And be discreet about it. Don't go flaunting yourself to the wife. I got your man. That's all. That's ridiculous. If you're the mistress, you're the mistress, and behave adequately. You don't want to ruin a family. Well, actually, a mistress who's doing it just for the money probably will behave adequately because it's her job, in quotes. But if you're the mistress and you're in love with the man and he's rich, and, things can overlap. You can be in love with a rich man but if you're the mistress, know your place and behave like a proper mistress. The problem these days is that mistresses are overstepping their bounds, thinking they have the same rights as a wife, and you don't. Legally you don't, and morally you don't. So just look at it as a job. If you're a young girl with wide-eyed fantasies that this man is going to fall in love with, that he's in love with you and he's going to sweep you away, and don't have those fantasies, because it's not going to work out always how you want. Be smart about it. And I'm repeating it because it's this important. Get him to buy you a dinky little studio apartment in a decent part of town, and one that you can pay the common fees on. Don't get him to buy you an apartment that's super fancy that you can't pay the common fees on, the maintenance fees. Because when the guy's gone, you're not going to be able to afford to pay the monthly fees. Although, if you can get that out of him, on the other hand, perhaps you could rent the apartment, and with the rental, pay the monthly fees, and you still have the apartment, but you can't live in it. You know, you'll have to, if the guy leaves you, you have to either get a roommate. You've got to have a way to pay the common fees of the apartment complex that you're in, or the house, or the gated community, whatever he buys you. Make sure you can maintain that property if he's gone. Pay the electricity, because if he bought you the apartment or the property, and he's paying for your electricity and your gardening and all the other stuff, you know, the lawnmower and the you know, the water bills, and if he's paying the bills, it's not a good investment for you, because it's not something that you can keep after he's gone, whether he leaves you or whether he passes away. If he's an older man, he could very well pass away in the middle. If you're living in an apartment that's in his name, you're going to lose that apartment when he dies, because his wife is going to evict you, because she has rights to it. She has rights to his inheritance, his kids. They're going to have you evicted. You know, and maybe you'll plant yourself, and it'll take a while, but they have anger against you too for messing up their mother's life. You know, they're gonna have you evicted and you're gonna lose that apartment. So these are all things to think about if you're going to get involved with a rich man for his money, whether he's married or not, really, but especially if he's married. And if you're doing it for love and you care nothing about his money, okay, then just fall in love with him, and if it doesn't work out, you'll be hurt, and it's just like any breakup, you know. But I still would suggest, even if you're in love with him, try to get something stable out of him. Is particularly if he's not married to, if he's not marrying you, and if he's marrying you, you know, make sure the prenup is something that you can live with after he's gone, because he is going to leave you for a younger woman or cheat on you, or okay. All right, guys. I hate to be so cold about love, but it's really, that's really how it is. Young girls, don't fall head over heels in love. You're not going to listen to me. But I'm just telling you, those of you who might listen to me, please listen to me. It's falling head over heels is wrong. It's wrong. Don't do it. Just be realistic about it. Okay, I gotta go. I've been talking a long time. Bye.